All that, we're going to go ahead and get into the Word. If you got your Bibles on your phones, you got the one that still got pages. If you just need to look at it on the screen, we gonna get to it this morning. And what I want to be able to do, as you see it, we're going to go into Judges chapter 6, and we're going to read verses 11 through 16. I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version. Hold on, I need my glasses. These are new and I need them. And so, as we are there, verse 11 says, "Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress, to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, 'The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior.' Gideon answered him, 'But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all of this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, Did not the Lord bring us from Egypt? But now the Lord has cast us off and given us into the hand of Midian.' Then the Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you.' He responded, 'But sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family.' The Lord said to him, 'But I will be with you, and I be with you, and shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them.'" I want you to turn to your neighbors as you go sit down and say, hidden identity. Yeah, that's for my note takers, hidden identity. So how do we get ourselves here in Judges? I wanted to give us a little bit of context. There's a space where you hear Gideon have this conversation that is referencing something greater. What is greater is happening is that the children of Israel, we know it, Moses and the 10 Commandments, and they come out of Egypt, and all these things have happened, but somewhere along the line, they begin to get amnesia. They begin to get amnesia, and they forgot about the pain. They forgot about the trials. They forgot about God's goodness, and in this amnesia, they try to fix it themselves. And so as they're trying to fix it themselves, God shows his kindness in Judges to be able to bring along new people, to liberate them throughout the book of Judges. And so as we have to focus a little bit here and understand, are we more like Israel than we think we are? Okay, y'all not going to tell the truth, but I know we've had these conversations, these private ones with God where we say, Lord, if you get me out of this, I promise I'm not going to do this again. Huh? Well, God, I know I wasn't supposed to, but if you give me a chance, I'm not going to do this again. And we find ourselves repeating the cycle of freedom, amnesia all over again. And what's interesting with the frustration of this cycle and this pattern that we're going through, we want to be frustrated that we're not making progress. Okay, let me say it like this. I know there's some young folks in here, and y'all didn't have these trials and tribulations, but there's a certain generation of us in the room that know how to read a map. Come on, my map people, okay? There's certain of us that we thought we was doing something when we got MapQuest. Yeah, okay, my people, you talking to me? Yeah, talk to me nice. And so the map, we understood that it could get us to where we were going if we knew how to look north, south, see that town, and make that move there. MapQuest gave us a little bit more up-to-date information on what was happening and what was going on. Well, the problem that happened with maps and MapQuest before GPS is they were only as good as the information that it was taken in at the time. So many of us have put ourselves in a position where we keep going around the same address and around the same address because we're using old information as opposed to taking in the new things that allow us to get to where we're going. So we're in this space where we feel and operate more like the Israelites with this amnesia. So here's one of the things that we have to understand is when we get to chapter 6, now Israel has done it again. And in Judges, you hear something where it says, Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. It also says at times they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord again. So it talks about the cycle we just talked about. But in chapter 6, we find ourselves where now Israel, who had done evil in the sight of the Lord, again, now has been subject to the oppression of the Midianites. Well, since it's Black History Month, I might as well say something. It is interesting that we in our country thought that 45 would change when he became 47. That we cried, we begged, we said, Lord, get us out of this. And then in 4 short years, we say, give him back to us. So now we are subject to the oppression of one who proved that they couldn't be good before, and now dealing with it again, and now the people are crying out. But as Pastor April said earlier, is that it is an opportunity that what is unshakable will stand. So we, as African Americans, have been through worse and have survived. We have been through tougher things, and we have made it. It's our faith that has pressed us through. It's been our community that's kept us going. It's been the demonstration and walking side by side in community that's gotten us going. So though the country is panicking, we stand unshakable. So even in the midst of their craziness, and I want to encourage some of y'all crazy folks that's not going to raise your hand. They knew who to call on when the crazy got to happening. And so here in this space, it says that the people were crying out to God. They were subject to the Midianites for 7 years. Now, let's talk a little bit about how bad these dudes were. The Midianites were, lack of a better word, maybe a little gangster. How do I say they gangster? Well, let's think about this. So they would allow for the Israelites to build, have their cities, plant their food, do everything they needed, and they would wait for them to harvest it and then come in and take everything. They said, the scripture said that they would show up, that they would look like a swarm of locusts coming through to actually take over everything that the Israelites had and leave them impoverished. Now, what makes this even more trippy, if you think through it, is that Israel had already compromised themselves, hoping that they would get ahead. Okay, some of y'all don't want to talk about it. Somebody sitting in the audience frustrated. I used to be that person because you compromised your ethics, you compromised your God, you compromised your culture because you thought it was going to give you a job, and when they gave it to somebody else, now you mad and you blamed it on God. Because you put yourself in a position where you thought more about them and less about God, and you realized they wasn't your friends to begin with. And it's leaving you with nothing but compromise and regrets. So as we move ourselves through this, we must understand that even though they had good intentions, it was the impact that they were living through. Okay, I've heard it said this way. We like to judge people on their actions and judge ourselves by our intentions. Okay. We want to judge you on your actions and me on my intentions. But if we understand that this is a spiritual battle in which we're navigating, the enemy don't care nothing about your intentions. He cares about the impact. So you could be well-intended and still fool around and get yourself in trouble. How do I know? I didn't mean to offend them, but their feelings are hurt. I didn't mean to take that money, but now somebody's doing something different. I didn't mean, but your intention doesn't absolve you for the responsibility of your impact. And the enemy is using many of us, like the Israelites, that have great intention, but negatively impacting and binding our people that are keeping us from being free. So when we get to verse 11, in verse 11, for my note takers, just write this down. The Lord knows exactly where you are. Yeah, somebody need to get a little bit more excited about that. But that's cool. We'll talk about it. The Lord knows exactly where you are. So what do we learn here? It says, now that the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide from the Midianites. He was hiding, but yet God knew where to find him. The Lord knew his exact location. This is personal. This is customized. So it don't matter how much you try to get people up off of you, God knows where to find you. Now, what makes this even more crazy and absurd is that Gideon is beating the wheat in a wine press. Why is that crazy? It's because what's supposed to happen when you're thrashing and beating wheat is supposed to be done in public. It's supposed to be done outside so people can then celebrate and the work would actually go easier. But what happens because they've compromised, the Midianites are taking everything from them, God finds him hiding in a wine press. He's hiding in a cave. He's hiding in a place that's allowing for him to actually do in days what's supposed to take him hours. Does anybody know how that feels, that you've been hiding so long because you're afraid of what somebody's going to say, that if you just had opened your mouth, it would have taken you minutes as opposed to years? But your pride got you like Gideon, crouching down in the darkness trying to figure out what to be able to do, when all you got to do is stand tall, open up your mouth, and help is on the way. But God is kind, that he sent the angel of the Lord to his exact location. So in verse 12, I want you to understand this in verse 12, that what you are doing in the moment does not change who you are. Let me say that again. What you are doing in the moment does not change who you are. Why do I say that? If we break down and understand Gideon's name actually means one who tears down. So his name as one who tears down is actually operating as one who's hiding. And so he calls him, read it, we're going to read it here. It says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty warrior. Now he's hiding. He's compromised. He's indoctrinated into the culture. He's doing things he's not supposed to. Maybe running the streets. Maybe talking to somebody not supposed to. Taking some things he's not supposed to take. And yet and still, when the Lord shows up, he calls him mighty warrior and lets him understand that the Lord is with you. Now, we sometimes are going to struggle with the fact that we see that the Lord is with us when we have a tendency to be in this social media generation, and we're in this quick being able to see things so fast. Is now we go from keeping up with the Joneses to keeping up with algorithms. Is that how is the Lord with me? Well, my highlight reel don't look like theirs. How was the Lord with me when I got these degrees and I got this experience, but it looked like they winning and I'm over here losing? And it's making it difficult for us to be able to hear and understand who we are because we are comparing and taking somebody else's truth greater than the truth of what it is that God says about us. So when we move ourselves to understand that the Lord is with you, I want to encourage somebody who's sitting in the audience by yourself, don't want to open up your mouth, don't want to tell nobody what's going on, want to keep it all private and quiet. We do it as black folks. I'm going to keep you out my business because everybody can't handle what I'm doing. I'm going to move in silent. I get all that. I get all that. I get all that. But the problem with you adopting that mentality and adopting this cultural perspective is actually using it. You're actually using it as you're navigating it with God. Because I'm going to keep people out my business. You done kept him out of it too because he don't have access to your private spaces. But even in the space in which you're trying to be by yourself, he says he's with you, but you don't want to give him access to what he needs from you. And so how do we know that that happens? We go to verse 13, is that when Gideon hears this, he goes, and I'm sorry, I was raised by a black mama in the 80s in Detroit, and it sometimes gives me a little bit of a trigger. Maybe a little PTSD what Gideon says here next. 13, he says, Gideon answered him, but, sir. Okay, some of y'all had that same mama. Say but if you want to. Because here's what they understood with that but. You not paying attention to nothing I just said. But, sir, had I but my mama, some shoe coming through, some punch getting ready to happen, because you but mama me again. And so we understand that Gideon is so comfortable doing it his way that he's ignoring the truth of what God is trying to get him to hear. And so what happens in these but moments, in these explanations, it creates an opportunity for you to actually start complaining. It's what I like to call this Aladdin syndrome. Yep, I like movies. Aladdin's one of my favorites. Whole New World, Peabo Bryson, all that stuff. But the one thing about Aladdin, it was a good blue genie. And what the genie would do, he would show up to grant some wishes. And we have a tendency to treat God like the genie. If you remember the movie, Aladdin rubs it, genie pops out. If you're old school, it was Robin Williams. If you're new school, it's Will Smith. I'm not mad at either one of them. Not mad at either one of them. But the genie pops out, and he's ready to grant you your 3 wishes. What do you want? And as he's ready to grant it, Aladdin goes through these different things of what he wants, and we've taken this subversively and says, well, God, since you say you with me, since you know exactly where I am, I know I got myself into it, but can you give me unlimited wishes to get me out of this? God, now I know I got myself into it, but I need you to hurry up and get me out of it. And because of this Aladdin syndrome, where we want God to grant us wishes to get us out of what we've gotten ourselves into, we miss that he doesn't address our complaint. And the complaint that we'll go back and we'll tell people, I don't know about that church stuff no more. Pastor April, you ain't seen people in months because, God just don't hear me. God just not listening. He done went silent. But if I had to talk to Gideon, I said, Gideon, y'all did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and you over here trying to figure out with your temporary solution, and you mad because he's just not getting you out? You mad that you got yourself into it? Let me say it like this. All right, we have a tendency, just pause before we keep going. We have a tendency to blame a lot of things on life and the devil. Now, for somebody who don't have no power, we get the devil a lot of credit. You know, the devil is busy. You know, the devil be working. I rebuke the devil. But then, you know, this new one we like is, you know, life be lifing. You know how life be. You know, life hard, life be lifing. But sometimes, heard Darius Daniel say it this way recently, and I'm not going to steal it. I'm just going to give him credit for it. Sometimes, it ain't the devil deviling. It ain't life lifing. Sometimes it's youing. Sometimes you are the problem. Because here's where Israel goes and they say, I see my circumstances. I see this oppression of the people, and I'm trying to figure out how do I get myself out of it, as opposed to asking questions on, Lord, what are you going to do about it? So instead of seeking him, we take it upon ourselves. Good intentions, bad impact. So let's keep it pushing. So in verse 14, I love this piece right here because this messed with a whole lot of church theology on people. Verse 14, I'm going to read it and then we're going to talk about it. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you. Before we get to all of what's in that, here's one thing I need you to understand. God is not going to address your complaint. He's going to authorize your calling. I'm going to say it again. God's not going to address your complaint. He's going to authorize your calling. See, many of us want God to get into that thing with, Lord, you did, and Lord, you see what they did. And you see right there, he didn't address none of that complaining. Because he wants to authorize his calling, because in you is the answer to your complaint. He says, go in this might of yours. All right, well, I got to talk to the men for a second. Fellas, we had a conversation yesterday, and I want to get your authorization to share with everybody else. I don't want to violate the principles that y'all tell Pastor April. He ain't coming back in 6 months. I want to make sure I'm back, fellas. With Sweatshirts, thank you, LJ. Appreciate the hands are up. Okay, I got the amen faces. All right, thank you. All right, let's get to it. So when he says, go in this might of yours, it's head trippy for some of us because we've seen ourselves like Gideon. We're in a compromised position. We're hiding out, trying to figure out what to be able to do. And we're going, what might or thing do I actually have that I can go do what needs to be done? Gideon's forgot this, what I told the men yesterday. For those who are taking notes, write these two down, and I promise you we're going to land this plane. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. I need you to understand that when God calls him and says, in this might of yours, go, he's already navigating what he was created in his likeness and image in Genesis 1. Genesis 2, the very thing in which he gave him, he gave him to have dominion over, for him then to be naked and unashamed. And he's hiding in a space that makes him feel like he's less than what he was created with. So simply put, when he says, go in this might of yours, right now, in this space, he's telling them, you were created worthy. You were created worthy in such a way that when David gets to thinking about it in Psalms 8, he says, who is man that you are mindful of them, that you hit them a little lower than the angels, and you've crowned them with glory and honor. So go in this might of yours. The thing that we've been complaining about, the thing that we've been trying to figure out, the very thing that we've been wrestling with, God is telling that all you need is everything that you have, but yet you want to navigate your excuses, your complaints, in which hides your identity, as opposed to walking into what he's calling you into. So as we move, he says to him, and deliver Israel from Midian. Here is where some of us struggle. I'm not going to put that on y'all. Be me sometimes. I said we ask God to get us out of stuff. We ask God to deliver us out of stuff. But we think it's like playing Monopoly. Like you're getting ready to get a free pass go. A get out of jail free card. But to go into what he's called you to, there's actually a condition. So you thought surviving the heartbreak was just for you to stop crying? You thought for you understanding how to navigate corporate America was just for you to have money and be comfortable? Oh, you thought that being able to raise your kids that got some sense and honor the Lord and honor you, you thought that was just so you could look good on your Christmas cards. Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from Midian. It is a conditional release. That if we go back to Genesis, what we just referenced, he didn't create them in his likeness and image just to be walking around. It was for them to have dominion over the thing he put in front of them. But many of us have gotten to a place in our lives. We've gotten to a place in where we've gotten comfortable. We've gotten to a place that when we ask you, who are you? You begin to give titles and labels. You begin to give things and stuff that has no indication on why God created you for this moment, this time, in this realm. And we're frustrated that we still keep seeing things play out. Because we're hiding our identity. I told the men yesterday that we have to put ourselves in a position where we have to flip fear on its ear. We hide. We have a tendency to hide behind our performance on the job or by our sacrifice in church or by where we happen to live. We have a tendency to hide behind these things because it makes us feel more comfortable, but at the end of the day, we are fearful. I'm fearful that what somebody might say about me. I'm fearful of what I might do to somebody. I'm fearful that I might not be as good as I think I am, so I'm going to keep you out of my business. I'm going to stay hidden, and we're watching the world go crazy around us. But if we're going to be able to grow and to be able to expect big things and have big faith in 2026, then we have to flip fear on its ear. That I'm in this space, I am more afraid of disappointing God than what anybody else got to say. I am more afraid of not maximizing my 1, my 5, or my 2, and he is disappointed that I was hiding because I was afraid that somebody was going to say something about me. It's something that happens to you when you lose someone and they're on their dying bed and they're having their last breath, and anybody who's experienced this, and they do not care. Listen to me. Do not care about a conversation they had with somebody yesterday, a conversation they had with somebody 2 years ago. They do not care. And the gift of being able to see that when my father passed is to flip fear on his ear and not to care that you won't be mad? Be mad. Because I'm going to be free and take the freedom and go do what he's commissioned and called me to do. But here's where we struggle. Verse 15. It is, I'll say it this way. Your labels are limiting your perspective. He says in verse 15, this is this Baptist rebuttal. Again, y'all know my trigger. He does it again. But, but sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. He has the label that has him looking through a dirty or cracked lens that's creating the limitations to not be able to receive the truth. Now, I'll show you another condition I believe that he's suffering with, that some of us have. I've had it. As I call it, situational truth syndrome. Aaron, what is situational truth syndrome? I'm glad you asked. This is when you use the truth to justify your current circumstance and not your future position. This is where you use the truth to justify your current circumstance and not your future position. So, Midian, I'm a logical person. Midian is wiping everything out. Midian leaves everyone impoverished, but yet in the weakest and the least, your family put that responsibility on you? I'm sorry, I happen to be probably not today, but I'm usually the biggest dude in every room I walk into. And usually what happens, they put a lot of responsibility on the biggest dude that walk in. So they actually are putting a great responsibility on the least of the weakest. And he then does not see perspective, label, limited, cracked lens, cannot see that because of what they've given him, he's actually authorized to do what God's calling him to do. He's figured out strategy. He's figured out positioning. He's figured out endurance. He's figured out all these different things, but yet and still, he thinks that he's the least of and the least qualified. It is our labels that are limiting our perspective to see God as he has created us. So the last piece, verse 16, he says, get my glass. See, that's why I need my glass. There we go. The Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them. He says, I will be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites, every one of them. I will be with you. I will be with you. I will be with you. He is letting him know that the days of doing it by yourself are over. The days of having to figure it out alone are over. I'm not asking you to not do anything that I'm not willing to get in with you. How do we know? We can look at the 3 Hebrew boys. That they decided that they weren't going to bow down. And what happened? When they go into a fire that they turned up 10 times greater than anything else, God got into the fire with them. We can see this also on how God is favorable, that he gets in it with you, that when Daniel was in the lion's den, he shut up the jaws of the lions that were hungry before he got in. He was in it with them. And the problem that many of us are having, the problem that I have struggled with, is because I want to be the expert as opposed to submitting my will, my insight, my information and experience to God and allowing for him to show me what to do. As long as we want to be subject matter experts and not living testimonies, we will continue to stay crouched over in the wine press to allow for ourselves to hide when God is calling us to lead. We will continue to be in a space in which we are frustrated because we can't see how to get out, but he says, I'm with you, go this way. But because that's not the popular way, we stay compromised, we stay frustrated, and we stay less than what he's called us to be. It's the hidden identity that we can justify. It is the hidden identity that we begin to position ourselves to feel comfortable that it's okay to do less than what we know we're supposed to do. But here's what I know. Some of y'all been crying at night. Can't get any sleep. Can't get any peace. Because you know that the life that you've been waking up to day after day ain't the life you're supposed to be living. You know that the relationship that you in ain't the relationship you're supposed to be being in, but you don't see a way out. That job that's actually killing your purpose, that's giving you all the anxiety, got you going to the doctor where they can't figure out what's going on with you, is because you know that ain't where you're supposed to be. But because you're so consumed and concerned with the how, you stay crouched over in the wine press trying to thrash wheat. So until we are willing to trust that he's with us, he doesn't do this. Now, say this, I'm going to get out your way. One thing I love about being black, it's Black History Month, so I can say it that way. It's a black church. I can be black. Black. One thing I love about being black is we know how to have a good time. You know, we're going to have barbecue. We're going to have the good desserts. You know, we put somebody on ice and cups. You know, we're going to have a good time. But y'all done had some people come by the house that you're trying to figure out who invited them and why you here. Who you know that you got into my house. All I see you doing is eating, and you not helping. And because we're used to people just hanging out with us, being close to us, not doing nothing, when we hear that the Lord is with us, we think he's just hanging out and not doing nothing for us. So he says, and you will kill every one of the Midianites. Every one. Not leave one, not keep one, every one. So what is your Midianite? It might be your depression. Every one of the Midianites he's killing. It might be your anxiety. Every one of your anxiety. It might be your high blood pressure. Every one. Whatever the condition is that you have, if you allow for him to be with you, he's promised that he will kill every one with you. But he cannot do that if we continue to hide our identity, to hide the fact that we were called for more, hide the fact that we know that we're meant to do something more than what the labels in public have taught us. There are many of us that have been comfortable because output and transaction makes us feel valued, but you were created worthy before of anything that you've ever done. And because that feels hollow, because it's been well-intended, because it's been purposeful, because you've been doing this and people are benefiting from it, that is not who you were created to be and what you were called to do. Today, he's asking for someone to trust. Just trust that where you are isn't where you're supposed to be, and to trust that he will be with you. David said it like this: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. There's a restoring with him being with you. But as he restores your soul, and this is what he's trying to get Gideon to understand even before David shows up on the scene in the Bible, said, I'm with you because yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Why? Because thou art with me. And he's just not with them. And David didn't see that he was just with them to be with them for companionship, and that's cool. But he says that when we get to the other side, there's a promise that I will prepare a table before you. I will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. And we got to stop thinking of our enemies as people and start thinking about enemies of the weights that we're carrying. The depression that told you to take your life. The anxiety that keeps you from being able to sleep. That boss that keeps putting on things that you don't have any boundaries. Those things that are going on inside. He says that I will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. Anoint your head. Give you overflow in their presence to say that you are called to what I created and commissioned you for. But we have to be willing to trust and not be so concerned about the how, but trust that he didn't make a mistake. He didn't get it wrong. That when he says, I'm with you, mighty warrior, mighty woman of God, mighty man of valor, this is your moment. This is your time to stop hiding your identity and to walk boldly into what God has called you to be. Amen.